hush courtroom that Trump orchestrated an illegal plan to corrupt the 2016 presidential election. Colangelo said, quote, "This case is about a criminal conspiracy and a cover-up. It was election fraud. Pure and simple." He said David Pecker, the former publisher of the National Enquirer, who is expected to be the first witness, will detail how the illegal scheme worked and what he and Trump did talk about to buy the silence of former Playboy playmate Karen McDougal.
Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett says the anti-Trump Democrats running this trial have two goals. Number one, to keep him off the campaign trail.
And then label him a convicted felon if they gain a conviction. They don't care that it will later be overturned on appeal because by then the damage will be done.
Two Columbia University students who have been assaulted by anti-Semitic mobs say the authorities responsible for their safety aren't doing enough to protect them. And Columbia student Elisha Baker says some of these protesters aren't even students. He says it is exactly like what happened before World War II, when Nazis wanted to exterminate Jews. Yet it is being allowed in this country.
We've been calling this out for 6 months now. We know that these are anti-Semites. And now we see what happens when you don't shut down anti-Semitic rhetoric and you allow these people to feel entitled. And now they're harassing us. They're yelling, "Go back to Poland." You know, when they say we don't want no Zionists here and death to the Zionist state, you know, what's the game plan? Where should we go? Right. Now they're saying go back to Poland. We all know what happened last time the Jews were in Poland.
And student Andrew Parker Stein says it's not just shouted threats, it's actual violence against Jews.
I think that's the most concerning part. People have been saying for a while now that they don't feel safe, and a lot of that had to do with the rhetoric. But I want to be clear right now, this has now gotten into physical safety. I no longer feel physically safe.
Christians and pastors have work to do to convince people to adopt a pro-life view. More on that from Charlie Butts.
A Pew Research Center study found 60% of Catholics think abortion should be legal, while a McLaughlin Associates study put that at 48%. But Frank Pavone of Priests for Life tells AFN the attitude of people in the pews really depends on certain factors.
It really depends more on the frequency with which a person goes to church than the denomination to which they go. Because the more you go to church, the more you worship. That's the opposite mindset of pro-choice. Pro-choice is, it's up to me. Worship is, it's up to God.
And God's view of the issue is pro-life. He adds there is another aspect to ponder.
But are the churches doing their job? Are the pastors preaching on abortion? We see a continued problem here that they don't. They run away from the issue, and therefore, of course, people are going to be, whether they go to church or not, less likely to embrace a pro-life position.
Finally, Pavone says people, including Christians, don't understand what abortion does to a baby. Early aspiration abortion sucks the baby out and often shreds the child. Second and third trimester, dismembering the baby limb by limb until it bleeds to death and the remaining parts of the child removed. I'm Charlie Butts.
And finally, two of America's largest grocery chains are announcing store closures.
Kroger and Albertsons will sell more than 160 additional stores, hoping to satisfy regulators who have concerns that their merger will control too much of the supermarket business. The two grocery giants have revised their deal with C&S Wholesale Grocers, which already was buying hundreds of locations. It will impact Albertsons stores in California and Wyoming, Safeway locations in Arizona and Colorado, and Kroger will sell its Washington-based Hagen brand to C&S. Janiko Sola, Fox News.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Is God calling you to ministry? It's time to multiply your capacity for ministry with an affordable degree. The Bachelor of Arts in Christian Ministry at Wesley Biblical Seminary is the degree for you. When God called you to ministry, He called you to preparation. This degree is the education that you need to put all the pieces together for an amazing life of ministry. You will graduate with a confidence for ministry that is backed up by your competence in the scriptures, theology, and ministry. Come learn with a trusted seminary that will help you become a faithful leader. Learn more at wbs.edu.
We inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to The Core here on American Family Radio with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. Yours truly here, Walker, here with you on this Monday edition of the program. Boy, does it feel good to be behind the microphone. Bobby, it's been over a week. Too long.
Hopefully no rust there.
Yes.
If there is, today we'll knock it off.
Yes, no rest for the weary.
No rust.
Yeah, no rust either. Yeah, no, we're squeaky clean, ready to go. We lubed up the cylinders before we kicked off here and topped off the oil, so we're good to go. Do you like my mechanic analogy there?
I did.
Metaphor.
That
we
was
just
a little bit different.
Blended it all together.
Yeah.
I can change some oil.
Yeah.
On my mower or my
We'll be
ATV.
giving auto repair tips in the next segment.
Yeah, I haven't ventured into though tuning up my vehicle, because you can go through these tire and lube places, in about 15 minutes to get you fixed up.
Yeah.
But I'll change a carburetor out on a 4-wheeler, like a small engine.
Notice you said carburetor.
Yeah.
Not a fuel injection system.
No, I'm not getting into that,
Nah, that's
Bobby.
too complicated.
You
But that's the whole
you
thing.
just went over my head.
I know.
I was trying to
Same
keep
here.
it simple. Leave it to the Air Force guy, to start throwing in the fancy terms that I don't know about. No, good to be with you guys, and good to be back in the saddle. I'll be here all week, and really be here until May. I got a trip in May, and then I've got vacation at the end of May, so we'll be with you for the next few weeks uninterrupted, Lord willing. I drove over to Dallas, Texas, just outside of Dallas, Richardson, Texas, in the Plano area, and had a great dinner with some of our listeners and some of our financial supporters. So if you were there, Rita and Jim and some of you, we had a great time, about 50 or 60 of us, and that went well. And then I drove over to Rogers, Arkansas, about 5.5 hours away, and had a dinner there Saturday evening, and then back home. And it's good to be back. But I enjoyed visiting with all of you over in Arkansas and Texas, and we'll keep doing these dinners around the country and hopefully meet as many people as we can. We're in Psalm 109 this week. I want to read verses 1 through 5 here. O God of my praise, do not be silent, for they have opened the wicked and deceitful mouth against me. David said, they have spoken against me with a lying tongue. They have also surrounded me with words of hatred and fought against me without cause. In return for my love, they act as my accusers, but I am in prayer. Thus they have repaid me evil for good and hatred for my love. That's verse 5. What I wanted to point out here is two things. Number one, there are clearly times in our life where we feel as though we are alone, where we feel as though we have been done wrong. And that's where David is here. He says that his enemies have spoken against him with a lying tongue. They have opened the wicked and deceitful mouth against him, David said. So he's petitioning the Lord, look, Lord, don't be silent. Lord, intervene. And so anyone who's been around the block, so to speak, understands, if you understand human nature, you understand man's sin nature, and why we're in need of redemption and an intervention from God himself, you understand that there are injustices in this world. I mean, just look around, and we're going to talk about some of them today. There are injustices in this world, and at times in life, people will do you wrong. That's to use a little slang, if you will. But raise your hand if you felt like you've been done wrong in life, at least once. I mean, all of us, if we're honest, can raise our hand. We felt like we've been treated wrongly by someone, and this is where David is. So the experiences that we face today are not new to mankind. The occasional breakdown in relationships and fellowship, that happens sometimes. David went through that. But what I want to point out as well, the second part, is that David says in verse 4 emphatically, he says that I am in prayer. He says, but he's kind of rattling off the injustices that are taking place against him. But then he says in verse 4, but I am in prayer. And this is just one thing I've been convicted of recently is what am I petitioning the Lord for? What am I petitioning the Lord for? Or am I even petitioning the Lord? Am I even interceding? Am I even engaging in prayer and intercession over circumstances and situations? David says he was. David says, but I am in prayer. Despite the circumstances and the way I feel, David says, but I am in prayer. So my encouragement for you is that you would take everything before the feet of the Lord, that you would submit everything in an act of humility and prayer, and that you would make this, make your prayer life, folks, less about you and more about what God is doing. And that really should be the mindset as we enter prayer before the Lord and we petition the Lord. And I mentioned last week the fact that prayer, we need to praise the Lord in our prayer. We need to open up with prayer, open up in prayer with praise to the Lord, with the recognition of His goodness and His place in our life. But after all, every one of our petitions to the Lord should be about, should end up back at glorifying Him. Like even when we pray for something for our purposes, whether it be physical healing, spiritual healing, something financial for a family member, whatever our petition is before the Lord, the ending place of it all, should the prayer be answered, should be praise and adoration before the Lord. Our prayers should not be ones where the ending place, if you will, the last stop on the road is something about glorifying man or glorifying us, because is that even a biblical petition? So this needs to be about prayer and supplementation before the Lord, and our prayers need to be focused on honoring Him, and that's where the end place needs to be the end result. And that's what David did here in Psalm 109. In spite of all that he was going through, he says, I am in prayer, even in the midst of difficulty. That's my challenge for you this week. It is Earth Day. I didn't know this till somebody mentioned it. But I wanted to mention, before you jump to celebrating Earth Day, and it sounds so great, doesn't it? Doesn't it sound great? Earth Day! Boy, the days that we choose to celebrate, that man chooses to celebrate, I think we need to make this Creator Day. And here's why I say that. Earth Day has, I could look back at its origins. I know there's some questions about how it originated and the guy whose idea it was. But what I can tell you is that we have a Creator, God, who created this earth, and I think we should worship Him. I think we should have Creator Day. And understand that this earth is His creation. We are called to be good stewards, but we are not called to worship this earth. That is not what we're called to do as believers, as Christians. We're called to steward it just as we steward other things, steward our families, steward our jobs, steward our time, but we're not called to worship it. And there is a distinct difference between stewarding something, having respect for it, understanding where it came from, and then worshiping it. Those are two different things, and we can't conflate the two. So that's my challenge for you on this Earth Day, Bobby, is that, you look at Earth Day, and some people look at it more innocently and not through the lens of spiritual things, but there's a lot of earth worship, Bobby, going on today in this era. A lot of earth worship and not Creator worship.
A lot of idolatry.
Yes.
And that's the long and short of it. You can call it whatever you want, and you made a good point there. It's very important that we be good stewards of all the resources, whatever they may be, that the Lord has blessed us with.
Yeah.
but to worship the big blue marble, no, not so much.
Yeah, exactly. We can recognize God's creation. We can have respect for it and stewardship for it, but we ought not worship it. We ought not have an idol in it, and that's our challenge for you today. Hey, I want to wrap up this segment talking about this all-out assault on God's design, on God's created order. And I've got a clip. Maybe we'll get to it maybe at some point later in the show if we have time, but maybe later in the week. I've got this pretty lengthy clip on abortion specifying and outlining the brutal reality that is abortion. I talked about this Friday on our Friday show. I actually got a couple emails in complimenting us for talking about it, talking about the gravity, the just intense spiritual darkness involved with abortion, the trauma it does, the life-altering trauma it does, obviously to the baby by ending the baby's life, but to the mother and the dad as well. But there is a common thread between the issue of abortion, the issue of baby sacrifice, and the issue of human sexuality. And of course, the two are interrelated, right? They're all part of the creation account. They're all part of God's created order, male and female, and being fruitful and multiplying. But this connection, folks, we've got to make it in our minds. We have to understand the connection, the spiritual connection between this all-out, wicked, demonic approach at life and this selective, elective abortion issue where a large group of voters in this country think that the baby's life ought be sacrificed if the adult chooses so. And I played the clip Friday of Bill Maher. He even admitted, now, of course, he's an unbeliever, right? He's a pagan, but he admitted, he confessed the truth on television. He said, yeah, abortion, he says, it kind of is murder. And then he says, and I'm okay with that. Whoa. You just said that part out loud. And so there's that assault on life before it even begins. But before children are even born into the world, they are already human beings with inalienable rights given to them by God, their creator. And yes, they are living, but I was talking about even preconception, this war on life. Even preconception, there's a war on life. And before children are even born, there's a war on the child. They're not even given a chance at life. They're being just slaughtered in the womb. And then there's the all-out push to abandon and recreate what it means to be male and female, human sexuality, and the transgender issue, the homosexuality issue. And there are people with a straight face arguing that a 13-year-old, that a 14-year-old, that a 17-year-old ought to be able to go under the knife and have their God-created reproductive organs cut up, forever changed, irreversible, no longer able to engage in Genesis 2 procreation forever. So the issue of human sexuality, male and female created in His image for the purpose of glorifying God, representing Christ in the church, and reproducing, multiplying, and filling the earth, and the issue of slaughtering babies in the womb goes hand in hand and must be defeated.
For just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. For the body does not consist of one member, but of many. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. Look briefly at one of your fingers. You've just witnessed one of the greatest displays of God's creative intent there is. No other person in all the world, even an identical twin, shares your fingerprint. God specifically designed each of us to be unique. That means we shouldn't try to carbon copy anyone else in the Christian faith. If God made you an arm in his body or a kneecap, praise be to our glorious God for drawing us to become a part of his body. How freeing it is to realize that we were never meant to copy anyone but Jesus.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
Sometimes you see a win, a glimpse of God in this broken world. Preborn rejoices in the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Preborn's mission is to love and help women in unplanned pregnancies by offering them the truth to help them make the right choice by providing free ultrasounds. You see, when an expectant mom hears her baby's heartbeat and sees the image of her baby on ultrasound, she's seeing a life created in God's image, and it's a divine connection.
And I got to hear and see my baby for the first time. Hearing the heartbeat made me cry, and it was certain that I was going to keep my baby forever.
To learn more about Preborn's life-saving work, go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com, or dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. All gifts are tax deductible. Your love can save a life.
And my father, your great-grandfather, fought in World War II.
Really?
He was a gunner on the big ship out in the Pacific Ocean.
Wow.
Your great-grandmother did her part, too.
Was she on a ship?
Oh, no. She stayed back home. She and a lot of her friends worked really hard in a factory because the men had gone off to war.
Ooh.
And they held scrap metal drives to help in the war effort. The folks back home were heroes, too.
Here at the American Family Association, we consider you the heroes back home. As you fulfill your responsibility of caring for your family day to day, your partnership with us is crucial as we fight the enemies of freedom in America. Thank you for your commitment to the American Family Association.
Grandpa, what's a scrap metal drive?
Let's get some cookies, and I'll tell you all about it.
At the Core podcasts are available at afr.net. Now, back to At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to The Core here on American Family Radio. Good to be back with you on this second segment. Well, I wrapped up the last segment just connecting the dots between the issue of human sexuality and the issue of abortion and how those two things go hand in hand from a spiritual dynamic and really from a real world practical perspective. The two are interrelated, and that's why they're so prevalent today. I would say they're the top two biblical issues that we face as a society, as a culture today. And yes, there's a lot of other issues to talk about, right, that we're facing as a nation. But from a spiritual perspective, from a fundamental biblical truth worldview perspective, abortion and the assault on human sexuality, I mean, those two things go hand in hand from a detrimental effect standpoint. And how can we get anything else right? And this is what I want to send home, and then we're going to move on to our next guest. But how can we get anything else right when we can't get right the fundamentals? Think about that. How can we get anything else right if we can't get right the fundamentals? And I know if I were to put that through Grammarly or Word, it would restructure the sentence, and that's fine for the English majors out there. But do you see what I'm saying? If the babies are getting slaughtered in the womb, and the male and the female can't figure out which one they are and how they should operate, and the fact that we're here for one another within the confines of one man, one woman marriage for the purposes of glorifying God and procreating for his purposes to create disciples. If those two fundamental truths are being questioned and undermined and countered from a very high level and a very effective manner, then talking about America's national debt or America's border or Ukraine or privacy or whatever else you want to talk about. And I'm not saying those things are not important. Obviously, we talk about them here on the show each week. But what I'm saying is, until we recover the lost ground on the essential pillars of civilization and biblical fidelity, until we recover ground on those fronts, I don't think we can genuinely and honestly recover ground on some of these tertiary fronts. I really don't. That's why we cannot lose sight on the spiritual dynamic at play that displays itself and comes out through the political arena. We cannot separate the two. We must understand the spiritual dynamics at play in American culture, in American politics, and everywhere else in this nation. Moving on to my next guest, I want to introduce Mississippi State Senator Josh Harkins. He's on with us to talk about a few very important topics on the program today. Senator Harkins, glad to have you on the court.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Well, Senator, once again, we're talking to Mississippi State Senator Josh Harkins. Jumping into, before we jump into a couple bills that are set to be signed by the governor pretty soon, tell us about a little bit about which part of Mississippi you represent, a little bit about your background.
So I represent the 20th District, which is basically the north part of Rankin County, starting in Flowood and going across Brandon and all parts north of there in Rankin County. I grew up around the reservoir my whole life, working family business in real estate development, construction, anything that sticks to the wall. I'm a husband, father of 2 daughters, brother to triplet sisters, and I work with my family. I've worked with my family my entire career, so I'm just kind of a local. Haven't gone very far off the original jumping start zone, I guess you could say. I haven't traveled very far, but I've stayed here my whole life and worked in with my mom and my dad up till my dad passed away a few years ago. But just kind of just loved living in this area and enjoyed being a part of the Mississippi Senate and trying to work to make our community and our state a better place.
Yeah, amen. And there's something to be said about that. There's something noble about that. And I talk about this before, but brief rabbit trail. When you look throughout human history, this notion of children moving away for quote unquote better things is really unprecedented from a historical perspective. It's only become the last 50 to 100 years where children move off 1,000 miles away, usually staying on the home front and helping continue the family legacy was the tradition up until recently. So I commend you for that, and I love to talk about that whenever I travel, because we're a family-run organization here as well. But Senator Harkins, I want to talk about 2 pieces of legislation that Lord willing are going to be on the governor's desk very soon. But the Mississippi Safer Act, this is a piece of legislation that we've worked on here in Mississippi. Of course, we want to get this done in every state in the union, and we're working to do so. But talk about this Safer Act and how it further codifies into the law how God created male and female and some of the basic protections there.
Well, Walker, I tell you, it's amazing that we are even in this position where we're having to file a bill like this. I think it kind of speaks to the times that we're in right now. But basically, this bill would define sex at birth, male, female, and according to that is basically how you're going to treat safe spaces for girls and boys. If you're a male, you're going to use the male restroom. If you're female, you'll use the female restroom. If you locker rooms are meant for female only or male only. Changing rooms, dorm rooms, universities, community colleges, if they require you to live on campus, they're going to be required to at least provide a single-sex housing space for their students. And so it's, I would say it's common sense. But apparently there's some people here that feel like this is not needed. And I'm kind of at a loss for words of why. I wanted to ask a question. If you use the opposite sex restroom in the Capitol, raise your hand. I didn't know it was a big thing, but nobody has raised their hand yet. So maybe if that's what's practiced up here, it should be practiced outside the walls of the Capitol.
Yeah, Senator Harkins, I also wanted to mention the need, the unfortunate but realistic need to clarify, and once again, to even have to broach this is in some sense a loss culturally, but can be recovered.
Mm-hmm.
But the need to clarify and codify what it means to be male and female from a biological, fundamental human creation standpoint, but that is needed out there. I mean, that is needed so that people are not twisting our laws and judges aren't twisting our laws to fit the desires of those who are confused from a human sexuality standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's going to the basics. This is what, our nation was founded on. It's what has been our norms, our customs. Everything has been divided along male, female. And I think by defining this, by spelling it out plainly for everybody to understand that at birth, you're male or female. You either have a Y chromosome or you don't. And I think that's the thing that we're trying to just say that, let's go back to the origin and let's go back to the beginning, and what you are when you were born is what you're going to be from here on. And I think this ties into some other things that we've seen recently on the political landscape across the country with the Title IX opinion, and we can talk about that later. But I think this is a further reason why we need to stand up and just go ahead and plant the flag on truth and plant the flag today and draw the line in the sand and say, look, this is what in Mississippi, this is what we're going to do. And we're going to define male or female, and we're going to expect people to utilize the facilities and safe spaces according to what you are biologically born as.
Yeah. Well, on that point, I do want to touch on that, Senator Harkins, since you brought it up on Title IX. But talk a little bit about that. Before we move on to the next topic, talk about Title IX, what the Biden administration is trying to do, and how states can fight back.
Well, this is another wormhole moment that you can't believe your eyes and your ears what you're hearing. But, they're basically undoing the intent of what Title IX was supposed to do, was to protect women and to provide opportunity. And here they are going and basically saying there's no distinction between male and female. And so I think, this will lead to, if left unchallenged, it'll lead to where girls and women will no longer have privacy in historically sex-separated spaces, such as bathrooms, locker rooms, prisons, dorms, sorority houses, other educational programs, the opportunity for men to take scholarships from women, in other opportunities. It will erase First Amendment free speech protections for students that don't want to be forced to use someone's preferred pronouns. It's just ludicrous what's going on, what's taking place in front of us. And I think it proves now more than ever we need to have legislation like the SAFER Act to stand up and protect safe spaces for girls and women. And also we've passed legislation in the past to help protect women's sports, but it never ceases to amaze you what comes out of Washington sometimes, and this is another example of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, we have Mississippi State Senator Josh Harkins with us today. He's sponsored and been a key player in a lot of good legislation in the state of Mississippi, and we're working to get these bills passed in other states as well for those listening. One other bill I wanted you to touch on, Senator Harkins, is the Lifesaving Treatment Act. We've actually done an interview on this in the past about the importance of it, and this is a very uncontroversial bill. You would think, along everything that we talk about should be non-controversial. But this one moved through the legislature pretty easily, from my understanding. But talk about it. Talk about what this opens the door for and how lives could be saved from it.
Well, this is kind of a version 4.0. Jameson Taylor, who you know very well, has been a big help in this legislation and several of the versions that we passed through the state over the last decade. The first version we did was a right to try, which means if you're diagnosed with a terminal illness that will lead to death, you can take any experimental drug that has not yet received FDA approval but has passed phase 1 efficacy testing. So we passed that bill originally, and then we came back and added on top of it, we added a disability that will lead to death. And then we came back again and added stem cells and devices that had not been approved yet. And so we were trying to take steps that give the patients and the families, Mississippians, options and opportunities to extend life, to help with quality of life. And this is just the latest effort that we have filed this year that will hopefully give people the option to do more individualized treatment programs. 2 states have already passed this, and a lot of other states are looking at it, but Mississippi would be a leader if we could get this passed into the governor's desk. But, you know, just the FDA and drug companies, as they develop drugs for illnesses and diseases, typically are doing so for diseases that there's a large population base. I mean, it takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of time and investment to get drugs through the FDA process. And some of these rare diseases that are out there that you may only have, 5,000 people suffering from, it's just there's not a whole lot of research and development going into some of these drugs. So that's why we want to basically come up with something that will allow them to try some different types of investigational treatments that are more individualized based on their own genetic sequence and other biological characteristics for that individual.
Yeah. Innovation is a hallmark of American ingenuity and specifically in the healthcare arena. I mean, we've been world leaders for a long time in the advancements of medical care and life-saving treatments. So continuing this and continuing the innovation and the options for some of these folks who are suffering from rare illnesses, to me is a no-brainer, giving them the ability and the right to try even very young drugs, if you will, young interventions. But some of these quote-unquote novel interventions end up being life-saving and broadly used down the road. So allowing folks to start those early and do what they can to once again foster an environment of life is a good thing. So thank you for working on that. Hey, Senator Harkins, thanks for working on all these different issues and doing the right thing. It's hard to find people to do the right thing and have a little bit of backbone and courage. So we appreciate you stepping up.
Well, thank you very much. And before I go, I do want to give a nod to my colleague in the House, Representative Celeste Hurst, who filed the bill on the House side for the SAFER Act and has been helping along with Leslie Davis. I would encourage your listeners in Mississippi to reach out to your legislator and encourage them to get this bill through. We've had a lot of great help. There's been a lot of good people working on this, along with the other bill you just spoke about the investigational drug. We've got great people in Mississippi that are looking out for folks, and hopefully if we can provide an avenue, this will spread across our country and provide the other citizens with these same protections and opportunities.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, Senator Harkins, thanks so much. Appreciate it, brother.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
All right. Appreciate that. Good interview. Good legislation. And once again, we're working on this legislation in multiple states across the country as well. So we got to keep pushing the ball down the field, keep being on offense as well, and just keep codifying over and over and over again these fundamental truths that are God ordained and God created. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
This weekend on The Stand Radio, Dr. Jessica Peck helps us understand the mental health struggles that young men face and how churches and families can step in.
I've been in pediatrics for 25 years, and I might have seen a mental health complaint once a month. Now I'm seeing them multiple every day.
The Stand Radio, Saturdays at 4 and Sundays at 8 p.m. Central on American Family Radio.
Thoughts of the child you were carrying keep pouring over in your mind. A deep, unrelenting sadness overshadows your days, and you wonder if you will ever feel whole again. There is hope and healing from a reproductive loss. Call the International Helpline, 866-482-LIFE, and talk with someone who has been where you are. Your call is confidential, and we will help you find healing. 866-482-LIFE.
The words you are about to hear are taken from letters sent in by members of the Trinity Debt Management Program.
Dear Trinity, today I'm making my final credit card payment.
Before I came to you, I was in a constant state of anxiety and panic, but now there is hope for my family's financial future.
Working with Trinity made me understand that I'm not alone.
You really do help people.
Your kindness will never be forgotten.
Without Trinity's support, I would not have achieved my lifelong goal of becoming debt-free.
We saved a lot on interest and penalties, of course, but the reward was the gift of human kindness.
Trinity has carried me through a very difficult time in my life. You're amazing.
I used to feel so anxious and hopeless. Now I feel grace and peace.
God bless Trinity as you continue to help others become debt-free.
If credit card debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813. That's 1-800-788-1813.
When I was 14, my dad died, and then I got married at 16. I look back and can see how I wanted my husband to be my security. I didn't think I could possibly live without my husband, and really, I was just suffocating him.
A lot of women think the purpose of marriage is to make them happy.
Some friends showed me that I needed to turn loose and get my happiness from God instead. Once I did that, I was so free. And now, we're about to celebrate 15 years of marriage.
The truth is, no one can make us truly happy other than God.
Whom have I in heaven but you? And there is nothing on earth that I desire besides you.
If you're trying to get your needs met from someone else, you'll probably end up pushing them away. But if you get your joy from your relationship with the Lord, He'll give you the strength you need to serve and love your husband. Are you looking to God or to another person to meet your deepest needs? With Seeking Him, I'm Nancy DeMoss Walkamuth.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Walker Wildmon.
Welcome back to the program here on American Family Radio. Walker Wildmon here with you on this last segment of the show. I do want to jump to our next guest. Tony Lauinger is with us. He's a state chairman for Oklahomans for Life. And he's working on, obviously, the life issue and other issues related in the state of Oklahoma. Oklahoma has become a important battleground on some of these issues that we care deeply about, and they're moving in the right direction. So we're going to keep that up. Tony, welcome to the Core.
Thank you very much, Walker. Great to be with you.
Well, Tony, I want to talk about a specific area that you're working on with the Oklahomans for Life and other groups in the state of Oklahoma. But it has to do with mandatory retirement age for judges, which in effect would term out some judges at a certain age and allow for fresh blood and new judges to come on the bench. But before we jump into the need for that, give us a glimpse in how Oklahoma works from a judicial appointment, nomination, election standpoint, because every state's different when it comes to state courts. How are judges put on the bench in the state of Oklahoma?
Walker, district court judges are elected by the people. Appellate court judges and Supreme Court justices are appointed. That sounds simplified to say they are appointed. They're appointed by the governor, but the governor has to choose among three candidates that are put before him by an organization called the Judicial Nominating Commission. The Judicial Nominating Commission consists of 15 members, 6 of whom are lawyers associated with the Bar Association, and the other 9 are lay people. Half of the members of the committee are essentially Democrats and half are Republicans. And the Bar Association, because they're the only lawyers on the Judicial Nominating Commission, we believe exert an undue influence, a dominating influence over the selection of the 3 candidates whose names are forwarded to the governor, among whom he has to choose one. And if he doesn't choose one of the 3, then the Chief Justice of the Oklahoma Supreme Court has to choose one of the 3 names that have been forwarded by the Judicial Nominating Commission. So our process from our perspective is greatly flawed because the American Bar Association is openly pro-abortion. They've adopted an official position in support of elective abortion, and the Oklahoma Bar Association tends to follow in their footsteps regarding philosophy on issues, certainly on the life issue. That has appeared to be the case very often. So we have tried for years to change the procedure whereby appellate court judges and justices of our state Supreme Court are appointed. We would greatly prefer the federal system. If the governor appoints a candidate and the legislature would confirm. That effort was made again this year, and unfortunately it came up short. So what we're focused on now is mandatory retirement age for judges and justices, such that they would have to retire from the court when they turn 75 years old. 32 other states have mandatory retirement age for Supreme Court justices. We unfortunately do not, and some of the oldest members of our court are very liberal. They've been on the court for decades, and they are not sympathetic to the unborn child, and we would love to see some turnover there. We've had years ago, term limits for legislators was adopted through a constitutional amendment, a vote of the people. 12 years combined total in either the state House or state Senate. And then about 20 years ago, we had term limits adopted for statewide election of state officials, governor and attorney general and so on. So judges are the only ones that can serve as long as they want, and the Ruth Bader Ginsburg model has been followed by some of the most liberal members of our court.
Yeah, the to your point, the way and the manner in which the 3 recommendations go to the governor for official appointment, definitely it sounds like it has some issues to it. So I know you mentioned that your effort and others to reform that through legislation thus far has been unsuccessful. But what's your outlook here? When do you suspect you can get that through the finish line? How much opposition do you have? What's the outlook on that reform to where you can alter the way these recommendations are getting to the governor?
Well, that change, unfortunately, requires a constitutional amendment, and therefore it requires a statewide vote of the people. So that procedure is much more complex than simply passing a statute. That effort was approved by the Senate to put it on a statewide ballot a couple of months ago, but the House came up short last week in the votes to get that measure on a statewide ballot and amend the Constitution to change the manner in which justices and appellate court judges are appointed. So that effort is likely dead for this legislative session. The bill to enact a mandatory retirement age for judges, that is still alive. That could still be done this session before adjournment next month. And that's what we are focused on presently.
Okay, excellent. So mandatory retirement age is still at play this cycle. And, of course, next legislative session, you'll continue back at it trying to get the amendment on the ballot to reform how these recommendations or nominations make it to the governor's desk for official nomination. Tony, thank you so much for your work in Oklahoma. These judicial battles are very, very important. These judges, whether it be in Oklahoma or other states or in our nation's capital, have a large sway over the direction of our country. So we got to get this right. And sometimes the way we did it in the past isn't the best way to do it in the future. And I think you're definitely looking into that. Thanks so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you, Walker. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. That's once again, that's Tony Lauinger. He's a native from Tulsa, Oklahoma, alumni of Georgetown University, and also served in the U.S. Navy. Huge life experience there, a very impressive one, by the way, and is doing work on the ground in Oklahoma when it comes to the life issue. And specifically, he's focusing on the judiciary and some reforms that need to take place there. That manner in which the recommendations or the nominations make it to the governor's desk sounds ripe for problems. Anytime you put an unelected board or committee over something so powerful, wow, that was eye-opening. I can't even believe that's even how it functions, but it is. And it needs to be fixed. It needs to be reformed because it really narrows down the governor's authority and power to do the right thing and appoint the right person to these judicial positions. Jumping into really continuing the life issue, I want to play a clip. I think. By the way, viewer discretion is advised, or listener discretion is advised, and here's why. This is going to be a graphic clip. I wouldn't, it could be more graphic, but it's describing how these abortions take place. And the reason I'm going to play this, and I'm going to try to do my best to talk and highlight this more, but on specifically the life issue, and we could probably say the same about other issues as well, but on the life issue, it is easy to become insulated from the reality and the brutality that is abortion. Abortion, fundamentally, the taking of innocent life, fundamentally, it's a travesty, it is graphic, it is barbaric, it is inhumane, and there are so many other words we could use to describe it. But it's not, folks, this is not just a philosophical argument with little to no real life ramifications. Because you and I might talk about tax policy or, how many agents the IRS could have, or fill in the blank, what our property tax should be. Should there be a property tax? I mean, we could get into all these different policy debates. And when you get down to the nuts and bolts of it, those are important issues, but the real life ramifications are much less compared to the issue of abortion. What harm will be done from this issue? And the answer to that is monstrous. Okay, so I'm going to play this clip of a Life Action video. Life Action Pro-Life Group put this together. It's about a 2.5-minute video. Audio only, though, clearly, because we're on radio. We'll link to this on the rundown. But this is describing just one of multiple procedures and how it takes place when it comes to abortion. Let's listen.
Second trimester surgical abortion called dilatation and evacuation, or D&E. A D&E is performed between 13 and 24 weeks of pregnancy. After administering anesthesia, the abortionist uses a weighted speculum, like this one, that opens the vagina widely. Because second trimester babies are so large, this greater access facilitates a late-term abortion. Late-term abortion requires that the cervix be prepared 24 to 48 hours in advance with laminaria. Laminaria is a type of sterilized seaweed that absorbs water over 8 to 12 hours and swells to several times its original diameter. Once removed, metal dilators can be used to further open the cervix as needed. Once the cervix has been stretched open, the suction tube is placed inside. A baby at 20 weeks gestation is as big as the length of my hand, from head to rump, not counting the legs. The suction machine is turned on, and pale yellow amniotic fluid surrounding the baby is suctioned out through the catheters. But babies this big, they don't fit through catheters this size. The baby's bones and skull are too strong to be torn apart by suction alone. This is a Sofer clamp. A Sofer clamp is made of stainless steel. It's about 13 inches long. The business end is about 2.5 inches long and 1/2 inch wide, and there are rows of sharp teeth. This is a grasping instrument. When it gets a hold of something, it does not let go. The abortionist uses this clamp to grasp an arm or leg. Once he has a firm grip, the abortionist pulls hard in order to tear the limb from the baby's body. One by one, the rest of the limbs are removed, along with the intestines, the spine, and the heart and lungs. Usually the most difficult part of the procedure is extracting the baby's head, which is about the size of a large plum at 20 weeks. The head is grasped and crushed. The abortionist knows he has crushed the skull when a white substance comes out of the cervix. This was the baby's brains. The abortionist then removes skull pieces. He removes the placenta and any leftover parts of the baby with a curette, scraping the lining of the uterus for any remaining tissue. The abortionist then collects the baby parts and reassembles them to make sure that there are 2 arms, 2 legs, and all the pieces. Once all the parts have been accounted for, the abortion is complete. For the woman, this procedure carries a significant risk of major complications, including perforation or laceration of the uterus or cervix, with possible damage to the bowel, bladder, and other maternal organs. Infection and hemorrhage can also occur, which can even lead to death. Future pregnancies are also at greater risk for loss or premature delivery due to abortion-related trauma and injury to the cervix.
Well, there you have it. That is a Life Action description of the reality of abortion, folks. It's demonic, it's dark, it's gut-wrenching, and if you were disturbed listening to that, I'm glad. You should be. Every person that debates the life issue should have to watch that video and understand the gravity of what we're talking about. This is a spiritual battle of good versus evil. That is the life issue, and we must fall on the side of life.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.